Hello, gals and my gentlemen. Welcome back to the Get Up Girl podcast. I'm really excited. And if you're tuning in live or if you're watching, if you're not listening, I am excited because I have my first gentleman today. And
Hello, hello.
yes, I have Samuel Donner. Now, he is the creator of the Finding Founders podcast. And I'm always laughing because you have to say that a couple times. That's a tongue twister. And you have had your podcast for 2 years now. I was just reading a post on your Instagram page about, I think the biggest thing about having a podcast is consistency, right? And really showing up. But before all this, we were talking about some things about how to get back up. So before we get into that, Samuel, give us a little context about how you got into creating this podcast and how you got into entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So, I've kind of like always been surrounded by like creativity and entrepreneurship. But I think, when I really got into it when I was at UCLA. So I was studying mechanical engineering and really not liking it. And I discovered that, I really enjoyed making videos. And so I started just making videos on YouTube, posting them just casually. And then eventually I got like a media scholarship to study abroad in Australia. And that was kind of like, oh, like I can do stuff creative and like creative things and projects and maybe get a little paid for it. And then I started doing freelance video, eventually worked up to a contract with Netflix. And that was like a realization like, okay, I actually can make money doing a creative field.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but like I enjoyed video, but I wanted to apply those editing skills that I've been learning to a different medium, a medium that was new and that was growing. And I had discovered podcasts a few years before and realized I really enjoyed listening to those. I'm like, well, what if I applied these newfound editing skills to podcasting? And so I started out just interviewing my roommates, who were all like entrepreneurial and those turned out really well. And I wanted to see how how can I maybe level up the person that I'm interviewing? And so I racked my brain actually to a point 2 years before where I was listening to this podcast called Startup. And the second season it's a Gimlet podcast and it's basically just about business. And the second season is about the founder of American Apparel. And I was listening to it and there's this throwaway line where the host that's doing the show is like, this guy always answers his phone. And I'm like, oh, there's no way he always answers his phone. And so I find his number online, do a little bit of sleuthing. I call him up and then it's like ringing and then he answers. And I'm like, wait, I was not prepared for it at all. And I was like a sophomore at the time. And so like, oh, can I have like an internship?
We were recording this with the camera.
I wasn't because unfortunately I wasn't doing podcast stuff at that time. But I did remember that conversation that I had with him. And I also was keeping in contact with him throughout the next couple of years. And so when I thought, okay, who should I interview next? I texted Dove. And so after that interview, like it went super well. It was very, very interesting. And after that interview, I feel like I could reach out to anyone and talk to them. And so from there, we interviewed the founder of Soylent, Ease. We just did Masterclass. We did Dave Asprey recently. We've expanded the team from initially just me to 10 people to 20. Now we're around 35 and doing recruitment. Yeah. And then people. Yeah. It's grown quite a bit. And now we do also live events, which we have a live event actually coming up tonight on Biohacking. We develop IP for TV. So like we create podcasts that we sell to like Amazon, Netflix, stuff like that. And then we are doing our own series within Finding Founders. We did interviews in Puerto Rico recently. We're doing a series on drug dealers. And then we're also doing a series on LSD, the founding fathers of LSD, which should be really
creators of LSD. What do you mean?
So like one of the people that we talked to, this guy named Douglas George, was one of the first people to synthesize LSD and distribute it. And so he turned on Owsley, who is like a really big figure in the LSD community, the psychedelic community. And then he did acid with the Beatles and the Grateful Dead. And
Samuel, how old is this guy then? Because
he's old. He's
I was going to say
80s, 80s something.
Yeah. How amazing is that? Okay, well, two things, but I want to go back to the biohacking because I am completely into biohacking. This is my last 2 years because I have the virus, Epstein-Barr virus, and it lives in the body forever, and it just kind of like will be dormant. It's similar to like lupus and things like in those families, right? So I have to continually do stuff all the time. So what is it that you're doing with the biohacking?
So we're putting on, we've done a couple interviews with some biohackers. One of our first ones was this guy, Mac Davis, who is essentially creating a company around immortality and trying to find some of the secrets of that. And he actually just texted me today. I think he might be closing in on a round of funding from a very well-known person within the immortality seeking community. But he, so I did an interview with him and really like was super interested in that whole world. He's working with follistatin, which basically is like you inject it and it changes. The simplified version is it changes your genes to allow you to grow muscle mass better and faster, and then also that leads to longevity. And so that was my entrance into it. And then we decided after doing an interview with Dave Asprey, who's the founder of Bulletproof Coffee, who also has a very interesting undercurrent of immortality research. We decided, let's do an event around immortality. And so we invited a couple friends at the podcast. We invited this woman, Liz Parrish, who's doing, she's doing like medical tourism for like FDA or kind of like non-FDA approved drugs and therapies that do life extension. So she'll go to another country, say, hey, this human testing work is working over here. Let's bring it back to the States. And then we're also having Michel Poulain, who is the creator of the term, and he did the founding research on blue zones, which are the places around the world of the largest concentration of centurions. So basically people who lived over 100. And we're just discovering like, hey, like, what does it take to live longer? And then how can we, what are some methods and maybe some new research that's been coming out that we can apply to our own lives that can help with longevity.
Yeah, right now I'm doing ozone IVs where they take the blood out and then they oxygenize it and then put it back in your body, things like that. I would love to have an oxygen chamber. Like,
how is that?
It's interesting. It takes about an hour, and they take out your blood and the blood is very dark. It's like purple. And then they'll go in and they churn it. And then as it churns, it comes back and it's like really red. And then it goes back in your body. Now, it's pretty pricey. So I do it once a month. But, J-Lo, people of that nature, they will do this weekly, Is
that similar to like what doping, like with like cyclists, where they would like take out their blood and like freeze it and then like inject it later?
Probably the same. Yes. Okay. Because I guess it's like sperm. You're taking it out. It's the younger blood. You freeze it. I don't know. And then, so the more often you do it, Samuel, the blood will be red more often. So if you take out your blood and it's more purple, then that tells you that it's not oxygenized, that you're pretty much like, frailing. But the more you do this, and the first time when the blood comes out and it's more red, then you're like, you're going to be feeling better.
Interesting. Are you noticing the effects?
I've only done it once. I have an appointment this week, but again, so now I'm going to be doing it monthly for this whole year. So like I bought a whole package. So we're going to see. Now, when I did it that time, I did feel better because I was dropping a little bit, but I do monthly shots. I do all kinds of other IVs, so
interesting.
Yeah. But one thing with biohacking, it is pretty pricey, meaning like you got to have some money. Like, I don't know if you've watched Justin Bieber's. He has lupus and things like that, but he has an oxygen chamber in his house. He just is like a Mr. Biohacker. And he says, he's like, yeah, this is not cheap, but
I think that's actually something that one of the people we're talking to, they're trying to address, because they don't want longevity just to be isolated to the wealthy. And that's a really big problem that's going to come around the corner pretty soon as these longevity medicines get better and better, and like these treatments get better and better. There's just going to be like really rich people living hundreds of years, and then all of us poor people are kind of just going to be doomed to die early. And so how they're trying to structure that is one of these guys, it creates this pod. It's it basically oxygenates the body through nanobubbles, and these pods are like $80,000, right? Wow. But you can buy portions of it, and then if you buy a portion of it, you can still like utilize some aspects of the device, but you also have stock and like equity in the company.
Okay.
And so he's trying to structure it in a way that um, you're buying into this vision of the future, and you have stake in that future, and thus, because it's maybe a little bit, I guess, he uses the term like decentralized, like a decentralized business model, because it's a little bit more decentralized. Maybe it won't be just in the hands of the wealthy.
Yeah.
And so company structures like that, I think, can be pretty interesting to play on.
I really like that structure. So like a pod, but you just won't have it at your house. You're going to have to
You
go to
can
it.
buy the whole thing at your house, but it
Yeah,
costs
there you go.
$80,000.
Yeah.
But you could buy parts of it that will offer like benefits for maybe just parts of your body. So like, just using it for your hand,
Mhm.
or just like, some smaller sections.
Interesting. Well, I'm hopeful for the future because I remember in the 80s when Michael Jackson used to do this and they thought he was crazy. That's crazy, right? And now it's so normal. Like, oh yeah, I have an oxygen chamber in my house.
Yeah,
For the
I
wealthy.
think it's definitely coming into the mainstream, but
Yeah.
people still think it's weird. Like Dave Asprey has all these odd methods and rituals that he does, and people still think like, oh, like that's kind of weird. Like he wears like these like certain sunglasses, and he does like the infrared
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
bathing or
Yes.
saunas and
Saunas.
all that,
Yes.
right? And some people I think still think it's still a little fringe, but I think
Less.
that's
Yes.
usually what like the cutting edge looks like.
Okay, last thing on this thing, because I'm just so intrigued by it. Have you noticed anything else besides these big apparatuses? For example, laughing more or having more sex, that people are living longer?
I mean, really, like, and this goes back to the Blue Zone guy, that we were talking about. He's going to be the last speaker at the event
Oh,
tonight
that
at
sounds
6.
amazing.
Yeah. He was talking about like, so what he did is he essentially traveled the world and looked for the places with the oldest people,
Okay.
and talked to them, and track their diets and their like physical activity. Um, and some of it's really like simple advice,
Yeah.
but like a lot of it comes down to diet. So eating things that are natural to the environment, so like not eating strawberries year round because that is unnatural, like only eating things that are seasonally, and also starting
Mhm.
early. Like if you can't decide to live to 100 years old
That's
when you're 50 or 60, right? It has to start as early as possible, and then you have a greater chance of doing that. Also, like natural movement. Not sitting in a car, standing. It's really, it's like the thing that's interesting is there's this very there's like these two sides of biohacking. There's almost I don't want to use the word extremist, but I'll use it just for lack of a better word. But like the extremists that are like, okay, like let's see how we can push the body, and
Yeah.
let's experiment as much as possible. And then there's people who come from academia that have been studying longevity, like Michelle, and like he's just looking at these older people and saying, hey, like the secrets to longevity are not really secrets. It's
Yeah.
like move naturally, be like exercise, it's eat natural ingredients, eat from your surrounding area, and don't have stress, and just like love more, because
Mhm.
the people that are the most like loving and caring in those communities are also the ones that live the longest. So it's these two like
Yeah.
opposing sides, or not opposing sides, but on a spectrum of like how one can live longer. There's all these new therapies that are coming out, and then there's the ancient wisdom that's
Yes.
just been just like, this is how the human body should operate.
I really like that because just last week I was journaling and I never hit me before. That was the first time I thought I would like to live to be 3 digits, where I never really thought that before. It was kind of like out, and now I'm going, like you said, start early. So that's
Yeah.
been in my world lately. Thank you for that conversation. Okay, now let's go back to the 30 in your team, because that is phenomenal and not all, one space. Now, there was one time you said that somebody left your organization. And
Mhm.
was that person pretty close to you? And then how did they leave? Because I've had that
Yeah.
happen.
So I, I, a bunch of people, like there has been churn, but like I think initially when I was starting out, it was like
Mhm.
a solid group of like 5-6 people, right?
Uh-huh.
And there was someone who had started from the beginning that was the editor, that basically like was the first person I brought on the project.
Okay.
And we worked super closely. He was someone who helped build out like the initial beginnings of that team. And when he like eventually like it kind of almost kind of suddenly he's like, hey, like I have to leave. All right, like this isn't. I want to. He wanted to pursue more video stuff, and like this doesn't like quite align with what I want to do in life. And initially, I'm like, dang, like what did I do wrong? Like
Yeah.
was I not creating an environment that fostered enough value and fostered
Mm.
like what this like the education and what this person wanted and fun and all that, right? And so the first like couple people that would leave, I would always have that conversation with myself, thinking, what did I do wrong? And maybe it's just like the amount of times that it's happened that I've been desensitized, but I think it's also like the self-talk that I'm starting to have with myself. It's like when people leave. When people leave, it's actually a good thing because what you're doing, and especially if you have like I think an intense culture like we do, like that really values like really good work and accountability. It like that intense culture acts as a natural filter, and so the people that are
Mhm.
that subscribe to those values and adhere to that vision and want to see that vision succeed are the people that you want to keep. And anyone that doesn't, like the actually harsher that environment is for the
Mhm.
people that don't fit that, and the quicker they leave, the better it is for your organization. And so now what I'm thinking more as is like building in maybe a little bit of redundancy, so when someone leaves, like it doesn't really affect the organization, but also just like not taking it so personally and saying, hey, this is part of the process. And each time someone leaves, we get like 2-3 more people that actually
Better.
stay on and are better
Yeah.
and are a better fit. And so that's a like the twist that I've been trying to adopt more recently, and I think I think successfully so. Like right, not like I actually had a person leave yesterday, right? And it doesn't phase me anymore. I'm like, okay, that's
Mhm.
fine. Like, all right, we have a 2-week transition period. Let's get the next person in there, and then we'll do another round of recruitment. And it's like it's all part of the process, and we are actually pumping out more content, doing more events, doing more work than ever before.
Mhm. I could so relate because, being in business owner for over 20 years and the first couple that left because we were so tight and
Mm.
really become like a family. And I took it personally. Just like you said, like, what did I do wrong? It's almost like a boyfriend that's leaving me. Like it's like a divorce, right?
Yeah.
What did I do? And I feel like I could have changed it. And just like you said, somebody will come in that's better. For your culture, Samuel, do you have your core values and are they written out or anywhere for them to see?
I mean, we do kind of have a manifesto, but really what it comes down to is like accountability. And like accountability, I think like spreads to a bunch of things like accountability to yourself, to your team members. And like each person is just so integral into the process. Like we don't have no one in the like no one in the company is like not doing it like anything. And also each person is very interdependent on each other. And so
Okay.
I think what that does is that accountability creates value within that individual. Like they know that their work is important because if they don't do it, then it can screw a lot of things up, right?
Yeah.
And so like, they know that there's value, and I think accountability is one of those values that I've really tried to drive home, and I think we're doing a pretty good job at that. And like obviously there's others and like work ethic and I think there's a lot of empathy within the organization and a lot of yes and with ideas
Ooh, I love that.
rather than like, oh no, that idea is stupid. I usually it's we feed off each other's energy. There's a lot of ownership over projects. Usually we actually have a fund that for people to try out new projects. So it's like, hey, like
Love that.
I want to learn how to animate. And I'm like,
Okay.
cool. All right, let's try doing some animation videos. Here's some money towards that project. Or I want to learn how to do design and make some stickers to do some like guerrilla marketing around different like school campuses or around
Uh-huh.
neighborhoods. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds fun. Here's some money to learn how to do that and actually enact that. Or like most recently, someone wanted to learn how to use Facebook ads, and I'm like, sure, like here's someone in the team that knows a little bit more about it. Pair up with them, and here's a budget to explore that idea.
Wow.
And so I think that like the ownership, the accountability, the empathy, all ties together into what we've really built, and it's awesome to work with.
I love that. Did you, Samuel, set that up on purpose where the accountability, for example, there's not a bunch of different lanes, like they have to work together? Was that intentional?
I mean, like, yes, but I don't think I initially thought of it like that. I think I just knew I wanted everyone to feel valuable and to make to also just to have a production process that is churning out content like weekly. You have to have this assembly line kind of going on. And so at any one time, because we release 2 episodes a week, at any one time we're working on between like 8 and 12 episodes, right? But between the team, and because we have that assembly line process, like each member is dependent on the previous person in that assembly line to finish their work. And so like I think it came out of necessity, and I also think that's like how I like to operate too. So I imagine a little bit of my personality is infused into that process.
Got it. I kind of think of like the cartoons when they pass the little thing, like,
oh yeah,
it goes across. Yeah. And if one stops, then it kind of gets that assembly line. I really like that. I'm thinking as you're talking, for entrepreneurs that are out there listening, Samuel, or somebody that's like, I want to start a side gig or something of that nature, but they're afraid to hire. What's something that you would tell them?
I would say like figure out the process yourself and don't hire. What I've always done is I try to understand as much as I can about all my processes and then hire when I get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so like for example, we're working on this this podcast for TV right now, and we're trying to finish it up. And so we've written out scripts, we've edited it a bunch, but I'm realizing, okay, like if I want to finish on deadline, I need to hire a couple more people. And so we recently brought on 2 more people to the project. Just because like I know each part of the process, I know how to put this together, but I just need more help. And so I think especially for like newer entrepreneurs, having an understanding of that process first, and then hiring once you are once you're overwhelmed, has been my philosophy, and I think it's allowed us to expand a lot, and also has ensured that I don't have too many blind spots. Because if you just hire out without understanding what that process is, you can easily realize like, okay, wait, I actually maybe didn't need that, or you can get screwed over in pricing, or you can just realize, oh wait, that's actually not good work. Like you need to know that one of the most important things I think leading a team is like, what is good work and what is bad work. And if you don't know what that is, you're not going to be able to direct people, and you're not going to be able to hire and fire well.
Yes, 10x, yes. How many organizations have I been in, like a volunteer? So they'll say, oh, we need Facebook ads or whatever. So they hire somebody. Just because that person has on their card Facebook ad manager, that doesn't mean anything. And I'm like, you hired this person? You're paying this person? Well, yeah, aren't they doing the job? I'm like, but just like you said, understand it a little bit. That's how I work. I got to just understand it first, and then I can hire out. I'm like, I don't need to know it perfectly. I just got to know something, because I can't hire this person if I don't kind of get the job a little bit. Yes.
And also, as your organization grows, you can delegate the responsibility of knowing what that is to other people. So like you need to build a network of trust. So like, for example, we have an outreach and community person that I don't understand. Like I trust, like initially when we had her on, like I trusted that she like I knew how to do a little bit of like what she was doing, but then her job has expanded, and she's learned a lot there too. But when she gets overwhelmed, she's gonna have to like hire out. But I don't necessarily need to know how to do everything that she's doing now, because there was an initial bridge of trust between us.
Yes.
And so that's just how it grows. So eventually, as your organization grows, you don't have to know everything.
Yeah.
But the starting parts and the starting points, I think it's pretty important to know a little.
Kind of reminds me of my parents growing up. Like they didn't know everything I did, but their nose was in it, and they're like, I'm watching you. I know, I'm not stupid, and I knew I couldn't lie to them. It's almost, but my parents trusted me. I trust you. You're going to go out there. I trust you. You're going to make wise choices. And that's how I see when I hire people as well. How long have you owned your business?
We've been running for like about 2 years.
Yeah, God, that is so great for 2 years. What's the biggest takeaway or the biggest learn?
I think like a big one is just consistency. I think how it started out for me is, and also just not just like consistency in like the nebulous form, but building processes in which consistency can thrive. When I was initially starting out, and then this was before we delved into monetization. This was just when I was like editing a podcast. It was really inconsistent, just because I would I would feel like as a creative, I would have to wait until inspiration hit to edit, and that is a terrible way to go about trying to do consistency.
Melting.
Yeah. And so, like, what I learned is, all right, how can I build consistency? Well, first for myself, right, make a schedule. So that was that first point. But even that, you can be like, oh, like who's gonna care if I don't actually enact this schedule, because it's just me.
Right.
And so it was something that helped, and something I think I actually I really enjoy, is just working with other people. And if I'm working with other people, not only will I join the process more, but I'll also be having someone holding me accountable. And so really quickly, I brought people onto the project, and those people were like, okay, like if I don't get my work done, they can't do their work.
Yeah.
And so that's like the kick in the ass that you need to actually finish what you need to finish, so other people can finish what they need to finish. And I think that's kind of where that assembly line process came from, is a need to provide parameters for consistency.
I completely agree, because I hire people that have the skills that I don't have, and I give them permission. Tell me, because I'm such a visionary, and I will get out there, and you got to bring me back in and have me do my zone of genius, and you do your zone of genius. I don't know if you've read the book The Big Leap, but he talks about, the
No, I
zone of
haven't.
genius. Yeah. Oh, what is your zone of genius then, Samuel? Like, you're the thing that you do the best out of the whole organization.
Yeah, I'll touch on that in a second, but I just realized you're wearing a bulletproof coffee shirt
Oh, no,
or a
bulletproof
bulletproof
mindset.
mindset. Oh,
Very
okay.
close. Very close.
Is
Yeah.
that Dave Asprey, or is that
No,
something
this is
completely different?
mine. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Bulletproof all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like where I really shine is, I think, understanding how people want to grow and learn. And something that I was actually talking to one of our editors about is like, what's the vision that you want for your future, and then how can I, and then like asking myself after I hear that answer, how can I best enact that vision for you? Like, how can I help you do that? And so I think like I'm really good at aligning incentives. So like, obviously I want people to do work in the organization, but people don't do good work unless they can see something in some way there in which they're going to grow or achieve their dreams. And so I try to understand and like really understand what are the like my team's goals, and then how can I align my personal goals with theirs. And then that's like rocket fuel for people. Like, if you can find that alignment, you're going to have people that are going to perform like 2 times, 3 times, 10 times better if you were just saying, do your job and do it well.
It's almost like they're in a dark room and they can't see the light or where the light switch is. And they're like, we don't know where we're going. Those were some of the big mistakes that I made. I never gave them an end, because I was like so old school of like, just do your work, like you said. Gosh, so good. I had a question and I totally lost it. But okay. Oh, I lost it. It was so good. Anyway, okay, I'm gonna go with a different question. Well, when it comes to business, Samuel, what is the one thing that you've learned working with employees besides what you just said? Because this is the thing that intrigues me. I'm like a high functioning introvert, right? As a leader. So I do better when I'm by myself, right? So anybody else listening like that, it seems like you love a team, right? What's the one thing that you've learned working with employees besides what you just said? Because I would love to take notes on that.
Yeah. I think, I mean, it kind of would go back to probably like accountability and ownership, but more than that, I think it's like there can be a need for people who are in positions of leadership to feel like they have to own every part of the process or have their nose dug into every part of the process.
Mm.
And it's important to give a little bit of like leeway for people to
Yeah.
explore, and not say like this is exactly how you should do everything that you need to do. And an example of this is we do social posts, and we have a design team, and I was like blown away where I said like, hey, like this is like, here are some general parameters for this asset that we want to create, but like please feel free to make it your own.
Okay.
And like just allowing that departure from, or a slight departure, or I guess room to explore within a given task, or within a given project, people will infuse their own creativity and their own vision into it. And again, like that's where that aligned incentives come in again, because like you have someone that's pouring part of themselves into this project, and then it just makes everything better. And then it also will probably lead to things that you didn't even imagine were possible. Like
Yeah.
another example is we've been exploring Clubhouse a lot, and one of the team members was tasked with exploring what we could do there, and she came up with amazing ideas because there were loose parameters given, and there was trust that even though the parameters were loose, she would find like her way within those and actually explore more productively. And so you can't give that to everyone. Like you have to really look at people and say like who needs strong parameters and who doesn't. But if
Okay.
you notice that people like I think what you start is you start with strong parameters, and eventually you loosen them up as that bond and that trust builds. And so I guess to summarize is start with strong parameters and then loosen them up so people can infuse their identity into projects and tasks, and then just create better work.
That's really helpful. Okay. When you give somebody something to explore, with that one girl that you said with Clubhouse, what is something that you tell her, or how many hours or days? And then you say, come back to me with ideas, or you say, come back to me with already like an SOP, those operating procedures.
Usually what it looks like is there's an initial meeting that we kind of have some brainstorming things where I share some of my ideas, what this could look like, and they share some of theirs, and then we just schedule a meeting for either like a couple days out, a week out, depending on the timeline. And then that's where they say, okay, this is what I've discovered. This is the actionables that we can implement. And then
Okay.
we just kind of run through it, and I say like, okay, I really like this, and I'm like, wait, what if we added this to here? And that's again another brainstorming session. But ultimately, I try to give as much ownership and decision making a power to the people who are spearheading certain projects.
I like that idea because I think, well, I know I'm doing that with my team, but I'm not articulating it the way you said it. So
Hmm.
I think if I articulate it more, it's like I'm doing it, but not really telling them I'm doing it. But I think if I actually say, let's talk about this, you have a couple days, we're going to come back, and I want you to tell me.
Yeah,
I
I
think
actually
there's more
try
air.
not to make decisions, honestly. Like I try to come to decisions with other people.
Yeah.
And I think I really enjoy that leadership style. I think it's a more empathetic leadership style.
Mhm.
And I think it's one that actually fosters more creativity and ideas. Obviously, it's not going to work for every industry, but especially if you're in a creative one, I
Yeah.
think that is one of the strongest leadership styles.
I like that because I just realized I had an aha. I'm doing that, but I'm not saying I'm doing that.
Mm.
I'm like energetically coming in, like I'm making the choice, the last decision, but really we're doing it together. But I think actually lifting them up and saying, this is a collaborative effort.
Yeah, and recognizing when it's their idea, because a lot of the ideas are theirs,
Yes.
and not feeling the need because you want to be the leader to say like, oh, this idea is mine, and this is mine, and this is my
Yeah.
work. Like, I think giving is, I think part of leadership is giving away as much ownership to people as possible,
Yeah.
and not worrying about like not being insecure about people thinking, oh, like you're not doing anything, like you're
Yes.
like you just, I think that it's a much better way to like just like give that ownership away. And the reward is awesome.
I'm such a recovering like control freak from like so many years ago. Because I thought that's what a leader had to do. I
Mhm.
fought that lie, and that was the little thing. Now I'm just like, yeah, go ahead, take it over. But I like how you said like articulate it. Okay, I'm going to take that with me. Any last things that you want to add in that somebody that's listening that has a business? Because this was really helpful for me. Last words
Yeah.
of wisdom.
I think, again, just going back to that idea of consistency, if you're starting out, build processes for consistency. Don't just expect yourself to like magically be more consistent or like change your personality. You have to build processes. And I think processes are what make successful people and differentiate success from just an idea and from execution from just an idea.
Well, on that, Samuel, how long did it take you to get momentum on your business?
I mean, it's there's different aspects of it, right? Like if you're talking about, producing content, it took like a few months to get, momentum behind actually making, making content each week. If you're talking about interviewing really amazing people, like that took maybe like 6 months. But if you're talking about monetization, that probably took like a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're talking about like being a known figure within like the space, like I feel like that's happening, right now. Like recently I got asked to host a show for Wondery, right? So like that's like that's an example of, okay, like there's different momentum for different parts of the process, and recognizing that there is momentum at all parts of the process. You shouldn't just be focusing on like one subsection of that. Because then you can maybe get a little bit demoralized if you're saying like, oh, I need momentum in the monetary sense right now. There's so many things that lead up to that, that I think should be your focuses before maybe monetary success.
So true. Because I think a lot of people, or at least girlfriends of mine or friends that want to make a transition, maybe leave corporate or do something of that nature, and they think it's going to be right away. And I'm like, are you ready to be consistent? And let's
Yeah,
go.
for a long time
For
too.
a long time, right? And I am rebuilding how many businesses, and each one, it's just like you're giving birth and you want that kid right away to like run and go to college. And you're like, the kid can barely, just sit up.
Has to grow.
Yeah, the poor kid was just born yesterday. Yeah, totally see it that way. Samuel, thank you so much for spending time with me. This was really, really informative. Where can everybody find you? And again, the podcast if they want to listen to you.
Yeah. So Finding Founders is everywhere that you can find podcasts. We also have a website, findingfounders.co. And if you are on Clubhouse or if you are on Zoom, actually, if you're on Clubhouse, just follow me at Samuel Donner. We have an event today, 6 to 8 p.m. If you want to RSVP for that, you could go to our website, findingfounders.co, and go to the events tab on that and RSVP. But again, we're on Zoom. We're going to be on Zoom and Clubhouse for that event tonight, 6 p.m. PST.
For Clubhouse, are you there every certain days or something like that? Do you have a schedule?
We're building out a schedule. So it's like a weekly right now, but not a strict weekly. But we're going to be doing events probably every month. So maybe the first Tuesday of every month on Clubhouse at 6
I
p.m.
love that.
PST.
I'm going to check that out about biohacking tonight.
Yeah, definitely
really
do.
cool. Are you hacking the audio as well for us that miss it on Clubhouse?
Yes. So I'll probably be recording it over Zoom and might release it on our podcast feed probably the day after or something like that.
Okay, we'll definitely check that out.
Sweet.
Samuel Donner, thank you so much from Finding Founders. Appreciate you. And remember, everybody, to get back up. We'll see you next time.